I knew something was wrong the moment I walked into the data center and heard pop music playing instead of the soft hum of virtualization stacks. That was clue number one. Clue number two, the laminated sign taped to the firewall rack that said, New Era Loading, in bubble letters. I'd spent 8 years keeping 18 data centers online, through ransomware storms, fiber cuts, overheating events, and one extremely memorable coffee spill disaster. And now the server room looked like someone tried to stage a YouTube thumbnail inside it. My name is Jessica Hale. I'm 39. Divorced, no kids, 2 cats. And I smoke 1 cinnamon cigar a year, only after surviving Q4 failover drills. I don't do inspirational posters. I don't do group hugs. And I definitely don't do bubble letters in critical infrastructure areas. For nearly a decade, I've been the quiet shadow behind Orion Tech, the one keeping the heartbeat steady while other people posed for magazine covers and keynote speeches. And for 8 years, no one, not the board, not the users, not even the CEO, knew that if I ever walked away, this company would stop breathing. But I wasn't thinking about any of that yet. Not fully. I was staring at the sign when a voice floated in from behind me. Cool, right? I turned, and there she was. Harper Kingston, 25, influencer, lifestyle podcaster, and the newly hired Systems Innovation Director, despite having no professional background beyond editing videos and posting aesthetically beige workspaces on Instagram. She smiled like we were girlfriends. James thought it would make the room feel less stressful, she said. Right. James. James Beaumont, the owner's son. My new boss. And the walking embodiment of the phrase, fail upwards. He'd been back exactly 7 weeks, and in those 7 weeks, he managed to rename our core architecture to Project Phoenix, replace the internal documentation wiki with slides full of emojis, and apparently hire his girlfriend into a role that previously required 10 years minimum experience and full infrastructure clearance. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. Instead, she tucked her hair behind her ear and whispered like we were talking about horoscopes, not security. I'll be honest, I don't understand half of what's happening in here, but James said you're going to teach me everything. My jaw locked. Teach her? Teach her how to prevent a cascading failure event? Teach her how to negotiate emergency vendor licensing at 3 a.m.? Teach her how to decrypt logs mid-outage while the CEO hyperventilates over your shoulder? No, absolutely not. Before I could speak, my phone buzzed. A Teams message popped up on the lock screen. James, need you in my office. Now. That smiley face wasn't friendliness, it was a warning shot disguised as politeness. I didn't rush. I finished my server checks, not because he asked, but because I knew whoever touched those racks next wouldn't know the difference between a heat warning and a system meltdown. When I finally walked into his office, James was already leaning back in his leather chair. Smug, relaxed, rehearsed. Harper followed behind me like a proud pet owner showing off a trick. He didn't acknowledge me at first, just scrolled lazily on his phone. Then, so Jess, he said, stretching the nickname like gum. We've been doing some restructuring, directional shift, new energy. That word again, energy. It was uncanny how people with the least competence loved talking about energy like it could replace skill. He continued, You've been here a long time, and honestly, I never understood why my father thought you were valuable. There it was. The first cut. You're outdated, he added. Rigid, non-collaborative, and starting today, we're replacing you. He gestured casually toward Harper. With someone who aligns with the future. Harper waved. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. Then he exhaled sharply, satisfied with himself. Effective immediately, he said, voice like cold metal. You're done here. For a moment, one quiet, razor-edged moment, the world stopped. Then I slid my laptop from my bag, placed it gently on his polished desk, and met his eyes. You have exactly 20 minutes before everything goes dark, I said calmly. Tell your father I said good luck. Harper's face twitched. Confusion, then unease. James scoffed. You're bluffing. I smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just enough to let him know I wasn't. No, James, I murmured. I'm warning you. I turned and walked out. No shouting, no tears, no panic. Just the sound of my boots on the marble floor. Steady and absolute. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone was already lighting up. Admin failure warning, license sync error, access denial triggered. And then the last message. James, what did you do? Answer me. Now. I didn't respond. Because I didn't do anything. I simply stopped holding everything together. Something they never imagined I would do. Something they never believed I was capable of. Something they were about to learn the hard way. By the time I reached the parking lot, my hands weren't shaking. Not from fear, not from adrenaline, but from something colder. Recognition. For 8 years, Orion Tech treated me like infrastructure. Necessary, quiet, and replaceable only in theory. And now they were about to learn the difference between routine and reliance. The difference between background noise and a lifeline. I opened my car door, slid into the driver's seat, and waited. Not because I was hesitating, but because I knew the dominoes had just begun to fall. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. First notification. Critical alert, primary authentication token mismatch. Then, admin override attempt detected. And finally, unauthorized credential escalation. Blocked. I exhaled slowly. That was them trying to regain control. Trying and failing. Initially, the system didn't collapse. That's not how it works. It doesn't go dark instantly. It flickers first. It questions itself. It looks for the person who built the bones, the documented pathways, the emergency overrides. And when it doesn't find them, it begins shutting doors, one by one. I put the car in drive, but before moving an inch, a call flashed across my screen. Unknown number. I didn't need caller ID. I answered. Jessica, a voice said, controlled but tense. It was Marcus, head of compliance. One of the few people who understood that IT wasn't magic. It was craftsmanship. Tell me they didn't actually fire you, he said. Silence stretched between us. You're kidding, he muttered. Jesus, okay. Listen, half the dashboard just logged out. Finance can't access their Q1 ledgers. Operations lost redundancy mapping, and... A muffled voice cut him off on his end. Then another. Background chaos. Urgent, rising, panicked. Marcus came back, voice lower now. What exactly did they break? I leaned back in the seat. They didn't break anything, I said quietly. They just removed the person who knew how to run it. He cursed under his breath. Then, James is asking if there's a workaround. I almost laughed. No, I said. There's preparation, there's maintenance, there's respect for architecture, there's institutional knowledge. Workarounds don't replace those. Seconds passed before he responded. He thinks this will blow over in an hour, Marcus said. He's already talking about resetting the structure and starting fresh. Of course he was. People like James always believed everything could be rebuilt faster, cheaper, and easier, because they'd never built anything themselves. Tell him, I said, that a system is only as strong as the person who understands it. And right now, he fired the last person who does. I hung up before he could reply. Not because I was being dramatic, but because staying on the line meant becoming responsible again. And I wasn't. Not anymore. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the city. 10 minutes later, another alert pinged. Failover license expired. Renewal required. That one would sting. Failovers were the backbone of the system. The seatbelt, the parachute, the safety net. They required manual renewal every 6 months because automation left too much room for error. I'd renewed every single one for 8 years. I knew, down to the day when each was set to lapse. Today, one did. Tomorrow, 3 more. By the end of next week, none of them would exist. Another notification buzzed. This time a text. Harper. Hey, sorry if today felt harsh, but we really need access. Can you send me your passcodes? I stared at the message, then locked my phone without replying. 2 minutes later, another message came, this time from James. Give us access or we'll pursue legal action. That was fast, but lawsuits can't reverse ignorance. I drove until I reached a quiet diner, a small brick place with fogged windows and the smell of burned coffee permanently soaked into the walls. I slid into a booth, ordered eggs I wasn't hungry for, and waited. Not for disaster, for acknowledgement, for understanding, because every collapse teaches a lesson. Some companies learn it too late. My phone buzzed again. This time, not a threat, not a request, but a plea. From the CTO. One sentence. Tell me you made a backup protocol. I typed slowly, deliberately. I did. 3 dots appeared immediately. He was waiting. I finished the message. But only one person knows how to activate it. A long pause. Then, you? I didn't answer. Because answers have weight and timing defines impact. I set the phone face down on the table and finally took a bite of cold eggs. The truth was simple. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I hadn't touched a single setting. I had simply removed the one element they took for granted. Me. And now the question wasn't whether Orion Tech would collapse. It was how long it would take before someone finally said the words James refused to speak. We need her back. By the time I finished breakfast, 3 hours had passed since James fired me. 3 hours. That was all it took for Orion Tech, an 18-data center multinational infrastructure provider, to go from industry competitive to quietly burning at the edges. The alerts were coming faster now, stacked like dominoes. Licensing mismatch, redundancy failure, vendor link invalid, authorization chain broken. None of them were catastrophic in isolation. Together, they were a countdown. My phone buzzed again, this time a call from legal. I let it ring, then ring again, and again. Finally, a voicemail notification popped up. I didn't listen to it, not yet. The words would be predictable. Urgent, demanding, vaguely threatening with a layer of false professionalism. Instead, I looked out the diner window. Morning traffic crawled by. A woman walked her dog. Somewhere a delivery truck honked. Life continued in its quiet, ordinary rhythm, unaware a corporation was unraveling because one woman stopped holding it together. I paid the bill, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside. The cold air hit my face, clean, sharp, grounding. My phone buzzed again. This time, the name made me pause. Walter Beaumont, CEO, founder, James's father. He hadn't called me in years, not directly. Not since the Madrid outage in year 3, when he apologized for yelling at me after I restored a failing load cluster in under 2 hours. I let it ring twice before answering. Jessica, he said. Not warm, not cold. Controlled. Walter. Is it true? He asked. You're no longer with us? His use of words, not fired, not released, told me everything. He didn't approve. They made that decision, I said. Not me. A beat of silence. Then, I'm being told we've lost access to parts of the core system. That's correct. And that our license renewals aren't syncing. Also correct. And that the infrastructure is... He hesitated, searching for the right term. Unstable. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. That's what happens, I said slowly, when you remove the person maintaining stability. He exhaled, long and heavy. This isn't how we operate, he muttered. Decisions aren't made like this, at least not without review. There it was, a crack, not in the system, in leadership. You trusted James, I said gently, not accusing, stating a fact. I trusted my son, he corrected. Another silence, not empty but full of realization, full of consequence. Can you come back? He finally asked. There it was. The sentence the system had been waiting for. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Walter, I said carefully, did anyone show you the operational documentation before they fired me? No. Did anyone check the renewal calendar? No. Did anyone confirm Harper's qualifications? His laugh was bitter. She once called HDMI Wi-Fi on a wire. I blinked. Hard. Then you already know the answer, I said. I need you to come back, he repeated. But this time there was weight behind it. Not command. Respect. Before I could respond, another alert flashed across my screen. Critical failure. Node 4. Midwest. Failover attempt unsuccessful. That one was serious. Node 4 handled 3 enterprise clients, government adjacent. Losing it wasn't just bad. It was reportable. Walter heard my silence. What happened? He asked. Your son tried to restart a live cluster, I said flatly. A sharp curse slipped out on his end. Not anger at me, but at the reality. I finally spoke the truth, the one no one wanted to say aloud. Walter, I said quietly, you don't have a system problem. You have a leadership problem. A long pause. Then, soft, almost reluctant. You're right. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said the one thing I never expected. Not from him. I made a mistake. It was an apology, but it was accountability. And accountability is the first step in rebuilding anything. Systems, trust, people. Jessica, he continued, I want you in the boardroom tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. He wasn't asking. He was reinstating. But I didn't answer immediately. Because the part of me that was still human, still damaged, needed to breathe. You should know, I finally said. The system will continue to unravel until someone with knowledge intervenes. How long? He asked. 20 minutes ago, I would have said 6 hours. Now? 4, I answered. He inhaled sharply, then steady. Then I'll see you in 3. He hung up. No threats, no condescension, just resolve. I put the phone down, started the car, and pulled back onto the road. The damage wasn't finished. Neither was I. The next morning, I stood in front of the glass doors of Orion Tech headquarters. Same building, same security scanners, same cold steel letters bolted across the entrance. But everything felt different. Last time I walked out of these doors, I left as someone dismissed, someone labeled obsolete. Now I was walking back as the one person they couldn't function without. Marcus was waiting just inside the lobby. His posture said everything, wired with stress, running on adrenaline and caffeine fumes. You're here, he said. Not relief, not excitement. Recognition of inevitability. I nodded. How bad? He blew out a breath. 3 data centers offline. The European cluster is stuck in a recursive failover loop, and Harper tried to reboot the vendor interface by unplugging a rack switch. I stopped walking. She unplugged a live switch? He pinched the bridge of his nose. To quote her, energy can't flow if it's plugged into old systems. I stared at him. No words came. Because sometimes silence is the only response that respects how absurd reality has become. We walked toward the executive elevators. As we passed open work areas, the atmosphere shifted around us. Hushed, tense, heads turning, screens flickering with warning banners. One engineer mouthed thank God when he saw me. Another just raised his coffee like a salute. Nobody smiled. Nobody joked. This wasn't office gossip anymore. This was survival. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, the first voice I heard was panicked and unmistakable. I don't understand why it won't reset. It worked yesterday. James. He was pacing outside the boardroom, hair disheveled, tie loose, looking nothing like the polished confidence he wore when he fired me. Harper stood beside him, clutching an iced latte like it was a life raft. Her mascara was smudged. Her confidence, gone. The moment they saw me, both froze. James spoke first. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, though the shake in his voice softened the edge. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Walter's voice echoed from inside the boardroom. "Let her in." James looked like a child being told to sit down after breaking something expensive. Harper avoided eye contact. I stepped past them and entered the boardroom. Inside, the full senior leadership team sat around the massive oak table. Laptops open, papers scattered, screens displaying warning logs in red text. Walter stood at the head of the table. Not the calm, collected CEO I remembered, but a man who'd been awake all night confronting consequences. He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Jessica." No title, no pleasantries, just acknowledgement. I sat, not hurried, not hesitant, simply present. Walter cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the situation," he said to the room, "and it's clear the instability in our system is not a technical failure, but a leadership one." James shifted in his seat, but his father didn't look at him. We removed the person who understood the architecture. We dismissed experience, loyalty, and context in favor of aesthetics. His pause wasn't accidental. It was a blade. The room stayed silent. I opened my laptop and connected to the internal diagnostics hub, one of the few tools still operational. As the system logs loaded, the room watched in tense silence. Node by node, error messages filled the screen. Expired keys, orphaned processes, conflicting permissions, failed handoffs. Finally, I turned the laptop so the board could see. "This," I said, voice steady, "is what happens when institutional knowledge is treated like a line item instead of a foundation." Someone swallowed audibly. Walter leaned forward. "Can it be fixed?" "Yes," I said, "but not instantly, and not without undoing the damage." "How long?" the CFO asked. I scanned the latest logs, then answered truthfully. 72 hours minimum for full restoration, if everything cooperates. "And if it doesn't?" the CTO asked quietly. I met his eyes. "Then you'll spend the next 6 months rebuilding from scratch while clients walk." Silence fell over the room, heavy, undeniable. Walter finally exhaled and straightened his posture. "Then Jessica will lead the recovery." James jolted upright. "No, Dad, she's doing this on purpose. She wants control." Walter turned, slow and sharp. "Control?" he said. "Control is what keeps 18 data centers from collapsing because someone thought LinkedIn leadership quotes counted as expertise." James's face flushed red. Harper looked like she wished she could disappear into the carpet. Then Walter looked back at me, not as his employee, but as the person holding the company's fate. "What do you need?" he asked. My answer was simple. Authority, access, and no interference. Walter nodded once. "Done." The board murmured agreement, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. "One more thing," I said. "All training and oversight stay with engineering, not marketing. No role titles go to anyone without qualification. And no one, no matter their last name, gets access without understanding the cost." Nobody argued this time, because the system had already punished arrogance more brutally than I ever could. Walter gave a final nod. "Then let's begin," he said. And for the first time in days, the room didn't feel panicked. It felt ready. The next 3 days blurred into one long stretch of screens, cables, conference calls, and crisis logs. I slept on the office couch, lived off vending machine crackers and burnt coffee, and barely spoke unless I needed a password or confirmation. The system fought back. Not maliciously, but mechanically. 8 years of layered configurations don't simply snap back into alignment because the right person returns. Every expired key had consequences. Every rushed fix applied by someone who didn't understand the architecture left digital bruises. Still, piece by piece, connection by connection, it stabilized. On day 1, Asia Pacific came back online. On day 2, the European failover loop broke and resynced. On day 3, the last North American node, the one Harper had unplugged, finally stopped throwing recursive authentication errors. At 2:17 a.m. on the third night, the master dashboard turned green across all regions. Not blinking, not flickering, stable. I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the quiet settle. The kind of quiet only someone who's fought technical chaos can understand. Not silence exactly, but absence of emergency. Relief with edges. A soft knock sounded behind me. Walter. He walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure I'd still be there. You did it, he said quietly. I didn't turn immediately. My eyes stayed on the screen. We did it, I corrected. The engineers followed every instruction. They pulled double shifts. They earned this. He nodded, accepting that. After a moment, he spoke again, not as a CEO, but as a father. I made the mistake of assuming loyalty and skill were permanent and guaranteed, that they didn't require recognition or protection. His jaw tightened. I let my son make decisions he was never prepared to make. I looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't angry. He was ashamed. Most people never admit that. That mistake nearly cost the company, I said. And cost you, he added quietly. I didn't deny it. Because being cast aside after giving years of your life isn't just professional, it's personal. He reached into his jacket and set a folder on the table. Inside was a new contract. When I opened it, 2 details stood out. Title, Chief Systems Architect. Autonomy, Independent Operational Authority. Equity, not symbolic, meaningful. And then, non-negotiable requirement. No personnel changes affecting infrastructure roles without your written approval. It wasn't about power. It was about prevention. One condition, he said. I raised an eyebrow. You don't leave again without giving me warning. For the first time since this began, something softened in my chest. I didn't leave, I replied. I was pushed. He nodded once, slowly. Not anymore. Silence again, but a different kind. Not tense, not uncertain, just settled. Before I could answer, the boardroom door opened and James stepped in. He looked different. Not polished, not smug. Small. Dad said I needed to speak to you, he muttered. Walter didn't move. He stood beside me, hands clasped behind his back. James swallowed. I didn't understand what you did here, he said. I thought if something ran, it meant anyone could run it. He wasn't wrong. That's what entitlement sounds like before reality corrects it. I'm sorry, he continued. Not loud, not defensive, defeated. You were never useless. I just didn't see you. That, at least, was honest. I closed the contract folder and stood. Systems don't fail because someone inexperienced makes a mistake, I said. They fail because no one listens to the people who know better. James nodded, eyes fixed on the floor. I'll learn, he murmured. Good, I replied, but not from me. His head lifted, confusion in his expression. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cruel, just truthful. You need to learn what it means to respect the work before you get access to the work. No one spoke after that. There was nothing left to say. I signed the contract. Walter exhaled. A long, quiet relief. James left the room silently. And I closed the laptop, not because the job was done, but because the message was understood. As I walked out of the building, not escorted, not dismissed, Marcus nodded from his desk like a soldier acknowledging another. Outside, dawn was breaking, the sky soft, muted. patient. The world hadn't changed, but everything had. And as I got into my car, I finally allowed myself one thought, the kind that settles deep and sharp. Being needed isn't power. Being respected is. And after 8 years of keeping everything running in the shadows, for the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was indispensable. And this time, they knew it.